welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. My name is Shogun. Joining me today is leader AUTHCENT, along with leader Richard Dawson and leader Jake Rowell, all my friends, all beloved members of the Roundtable server. And we are going to discuss totalitarianism, leader AUTHCENT's very unique social engineering and simulation project in studying this through human interactions, which I'm curious about, and also maybe a little bit about her history, which sounds interesting. So before we get started, please follow and subscribe to the Roundtable Discord podcast, which has over 250 episodes, which you can find on YouTube and BitChute and Podbean, where you can download it as well. Find that in the App Store. But most of all, please join the Roundtable Discord server, where we record this podcast usually every day at 8 p.m. Central. With that being said, welcome, Leader AUTHCENT. How are you?
Thank you, Citizen Shogun. I am doing most excellently. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. And I am looking forward to our discussion. So as you know, I identify myself as a meritocratic authoritarian. We're not going to talk about that probably much today. But you identify as a totalitarian. So a reasonable point of entry would be to tell us, what is totalitarianism?
Totalitarianism is on the authoritarian spectrum at the very top of it. Totalitarianism simply means beyond political control over a society. For example, a totalitarian state would potentially control areas of life, including social, including not just the typical economics and political, but also even religious, or right down to how people behave in public.
Okay, so what it mandates is that the state would have control over every facet of the citizens' lives, including those which are currently considered private or personal.
Yes, that is correct, citizen. It would be specifically that they would have this power, not necessarily that they would use it.
Right. So there would be absolutely no domains of human behavior that would be potentially private. All of them would be potentially open to state control and observation, but only if necessary. But what would be a situation where it might be, for example, necessary to, monitor people in their bedrooms to see how often they have sex, for example? And I'm not using this as to be crass. I'm just trying to interrogate if is there a reason the state would need to intervene into the bedrooms? Because in Canada, where I live and you live as well, Pierre Trudeau, I think, was the one who said the state has no place in the bedrooms of the nation. Now, a totalitarian would say the state does have a place in the bedrooms of the nation. So how would you defend that position?
If you have nothing to fear, if you have nothing to hide, the idea of monitoring is global. In this state, there is no privacy. There is no privacy. There is no need for it. It is not necessarily your activities with consenting persons. It is more specifically your activities that could potentially be with non-consenting persons that would be of concern. Since everything is monitored right down to your sleep cycles, this allows the society to better understand and categorize you based on a behavior set and provide you with the appropriate job placement opportunities by studying every aspect of your life.
So would it be fair to characterize totalitarianism as an extreme form of technocracy in which, everything is kind of scientifically administered according to metrics and algorithms by, experts?
Yes, that would be fair, Citizen Shogun. That would be fair.
Okay. So is there a country or countries, current or in the past, who you feel have represented totalitarianism in a way that you would point to as an example?
No, citizen Shogun. I have yet to find an example in history or in the present.
Can you talk then about a one or more fictional totalitarian societies, in particular the one known as INGSOC from, I believe it was George Orwell's 1984. Or was that Aldous Huxley? It was George Orwell, yeah. So
Citizen Shogun, use honorifics.
I apologize. Who was I referring to? You, leader AUTHCENT. Can you discuss INGSOC and what the significance of it is in your ideology? And I apologize if I broke the decorum.
I accept your apology, citizen. 1984 would be a non-big tech variety of totalitarianism, yes. It would be unfair to compare what I am advocating for to what was featured in 1984 purely because INGSOC was a parody of what socialism could become under a strong authoritarian leadership.
Yes, I see what you mean, that it was intended as a parody and a critique. But I would also say that the core elements of the society in 1984 are those which you describe, such as universal surveillance by, Big Brother representing benevolent government. I will agree it's not obviously going to be the same version of totalitarianism, though, that you're proposing. I was just curious what you thought about that concept. But those are some good points on this. I think it would be interesting to discuss a little bit about. Well, actually, I'd like to get into this. What made you come to believe that totalitarianism was the best form of government? So I think you have a bit of an origin story with this. Like, most people are not totalitarian. I'm authoritarian. Very few people identify as that, even less as totalitarian. So what caused that decision in you?
I came from a background which was fairly apolitical. My family was fairly apolitical. We watched the news on CNN as I was growing up. The first political experience I had was watching the election and hoping John Kerry would win. Canadian politics never particularly interested me, even in my youth, though I would vote when I became legal age, and I did watch the elections prior to legal age. As I developed politically, I started to gain fascination for the area, at which point I adopted globalism for a good long time, over 10 years, which I am a globalist to this day. I am not as active in it as I was at the time. I would say I am moving more towards that again. I was fairly authoritarian from day one, except for the period of time in my life where I was apolitical, of course. It was actually coronavirus and the various responses that nations are having to it that pushed me all the way to the top to hit totalitarianism. I took a lot of political compasses through my life and they tracked my progress. And I always did notice that I kept going up the compass. I went to the far left at one point, almost hitting communism, and then realized there were certain elements of communism that I could not accept, like the dissolving of a state or the erasing of class or the erasing of the concept of money. That is not to say that I support or am an advocate of capitalism, because I am not. However, there are pieces from capitalism and pieces from communism that can be quite effective for governance. Anyway, I carried on from my prior position to continuing to move up the compass. And when I finally did hit the top and I went off the compass to where INGSOC would have been, to put it into the Grej terminology, I am, what does he call it, an anti-realist? except there's nothing anti or not realistic about it. However, that is where it stands. And it is purely because I look in my society at people who believe it is a political statement to not wear a mask. And I disagree with them wholeheartedly. I believe that they need to wear a mask. And if they wish to participate in society, they need to wear a mask. They need to take their vaccine when it becomes available. And if the government cannot force them to do so, that is something I disagree with. So I believe that the government should be able to force citizens to do certain things for their overall betterment. And you wearing a mask, or not wearing a mask in this case, should not be your right because you are actually endangering others. That would be why I went to the top of the compass.
Right, and that is understandable. And as an authoritarian, I agree. Whether you believe this about COVID or not, if there's ever a sufficiently severe public health crisis, things like mandatory vaccines, masks, etc., would definitely be within the realm of what I think a state would be totally justified to insist on. Canada insists on this. America apparently doesn't, but in Canada, you can't go into any store, whatever. And I wouldn't say that Canada is totalitarian, but we've gone as far as to accept that they have control over public health. But I don't want to get sidetracked or long-winded. I do want to ask you a little bit about your background. You've, I think, mentioned that you had some connection with Satanism in the past, and I'm a little curious if you could elaborate on that at all.
Well, I have been, or I should say, I was a theist since I can remember. I was raised Christian with a Christian family. I went to Sunday school, I went to Christian school, and I had a lot of questions, which got me into a lot of trouble. I was very anti-authority growing up as a child. I questioned my teachers, and I questioned any authority figure that dared to say that I should listen to them. So through all of that, I maintained my theism all the way through, albeit in different belief systems. And I did get involved in the darker side of the occult, in Satanism, witchcraft, and things of that sort. And I would say recently I decided that religion is superstition, and I was simply deluding myself to carry on with it. Ultimately, the reason that I despised atheists in the past was because subconsciously I must have known I would become one, and an anti-theist as well. So I put superstition behind me, and I advise that anyone else who has superstition abandon it, because your life will be better without it. Significantly so.
Interesting. So before we open it up to a broader and more general discussion, I do want to ask you about your project, which will go unnamed. But can you tell me a little bit about, what the idea is? Because as you know, I didn't feel I would be able to comply with the rules. I respect the rules. I insist people follow them here. So I didn't want to join somewhere I didn't think I could follow them. But I've heard a lot about it. So what can you tell me about it?
So I have created a social experiment of sorts. The idea is to implement very strict rules and provide a safe space for people from various countries. I understand that people from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea cannot access such a service. However, if they ever could, it is my objective that they would feel safe doing so, and their government would see nothing that harms their citizenry in terms of expression in this area. The idea is through these strict policies, those involved in the experiment will begin to adopt the behaviors, which is successful so far. And they will begin to display those behaviors outside of the internet in their real life, which is also starting to occur. The idea is fairly simple. Once these behaviors are adopted, it is a representation of the ideology. The ideology is a piece of their identity, becomes their core identity. They exist all over the world, and the more of them there are, the bigger the movement will get, until people see how unified this particular group is, and they will want to be part of it because they will look outside of this group and say, look, these people are fighting, these people are divided, but this group over here, they all seem to just agree with each other all the time. And they are polite to each other, and there is no bullying, and there is no racism, and there is no sexism. There is no homophobia, no transphobia, no science denial, no conspiracy theories. So the concept is, to paraphrase a great thinker, be the change you desire to see in the world. And that is what this entire project is about.
Well, that sounds very interesting. And a follow-up question would be, how do you manage the simulation aspect? Because leader Richard Dawson describes it as Dungeons and Dragons, which I'm familiar with, but I don't think actually using the Dungeons and Dragons rule set. So did you create your own structure for it? Is it just like, how does that work? Do you roll dice?
It is not a simulation, Citizen Shogun. It is a social experiment which has specific rules attached to it. It is monitored to see if it is successful or not, and so far it is. We do perform small-scale thought experiments. We put ourselves in different situations and see how we would behave in them in a closed and safe environment. This way, if these things occurred, or any variation of these things occurred outside of this closed environment, the people would have a better opportunity to be able to face it, especially with the changing times we live in. For example, one of the announcements made in the experiment was regarding social distancing for over the holidays. And it is my sincere hope that the citizens involved and the leaders involved took that to heart, and it helped them to understand the importance of this rule. So that is the idea. It is not a simulated government in any mock government or state simulation. It is a social experiment, which has a structured server attached to it.
Understood. And that sounds interesting. So very interesting indeed. I want to open it up though to audience participation. We have a large group here. We've covered the basics that I wanted to cover. So is there anybody, if assuming that's all right with you, Leader AUTHCENT, and everyone else, that we go to audience participation, but is there anyone who had a question or a comment that they wanted to make? Otherwise, I'll continue with the interview. Does anyone have a question for Leader AUTHCENT or anyone else? All right. So here's a question for you. So in an authoritarian system, or rather a totalitarian system like the one you propose, I imagine that you would prohibit the practice of religion. Is that correct?
Yes, all religions are banned. All superstitions, science denial, and conspiracy theories are banned.
Okay.
That is correct, citizen.
So there are two aspects of that that I think would be worth discussing. One is religion and the other is conspiracy theories, because those are both things we frequently discuss here. Let's begin with religion. So the thing that's interesting to me about religion is that according to science, right, and you say you don't like science denial, according to science, religion has a whole holistic suite of benefits for people. People who regularly attend church services have an average life expectancy 7 years longer than people who do not, which is very significant. They have lower rates of divorce, lower rates of alcoholism, lower rates of suicide. Their children have better mental health. Their communities have better health outcomes. The economies of entire nations have been estimated to benefit to the tune of like trillions of dollars, to the point that religion is considered, I think, the fourth biggest industry in America. So on any metric, religion is beneficial. So my question is, as a social engineer, even if you didn't believe that religion was quote unquote true, wouldn't it be logical to inculcate it in your populace as a simple matter of pragmatics?
Absolutely not, Citizen Shogun. Not in any way, shape, or form. The only thing that would be acceptable in society of this sort would be the eternal state, which they have in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, where they have the eternal leader. The idea of the party, the idea behind the party can be, for lack of better terms, eternal, because it is beyond any of its leaders, it is beyond any of its citizens. It lives and breathes through history, no matter what is done with history.
Well, that was an interesting and poetic answer. I'm not totally sure I understood it. That's on me. But I guess I'll just reiterate that I think that a state should probably incorporate a traditional, this is just my opinion. I think it should incorporate a traditionalistic and religious element, because I think that has a proven adaptive function for humanity. And that's why every society that has succeeded has incorporated this. So when you look at this in terms of like competition and evolutionary biology and so forth, a social structure would have existed and become universal if it was maladaptive. It provides great advantages. Even Karl Marx inadvertently acknowledged this when he said religion is the opium of the masses, but opium is literally one of the essential medicines that every hospital has to have. So it's actually quite important to have an opium like that. And I know we're not going to see eye to eye on this, but this is where we start. Yeah.
Citizen Shogun, did I ask you for your opinion?
You did not, but that wasn't required, even according to the rules we established. However,
Actually, it is.
well,
It was made perfectly clear that they would be questions, not opinions, and certainly not your opinions. You want and there's no need to laugh either. You
well,
want a experience, which is what this is. This is a performance.
sure.
As such, your opinion is worthless to us.
Okay. Well, I apologize for invalidly giving my opinion. So where should we continue to? Does anyone have a question for Miss? Or sorry, I apologize, Leader AUTHCENT, for giving my opinion.
Your apology is
Leader
accepted.
AUTHCENT. Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't
Leader
interrupt,
AUTHCENT.
Seth. Don't interrupt.
You are too emotive in your tone. Take a deep breath. Relax.
Me?
You and Seth.
Leader AUTHCENT, I apologize for giving my opinion.
Your apology is accepted, Citizen Shogun.
May I ask a question?
Ask Leader AUTHCENT if you can ask a question about a particular subject.
Leader AUTHCENT, may I ask a question about a particular subject?
No, you're supposed to specify a subject.
Citizen Seth, your tone is too emotive. Fix it.
But
You have
please.
to affect a flat tone that is official and professional. Well, not even professional. That is impersonal.
Leader AUTHCENT, may I ask a question?
What is this question regarding, citizen?
Do Black Lives Matter?
All lives matter. There is no racism in what I propose. And I understand the term all lives matter is a loaded statement. And I understand why the term Black Lives Matter exists. It is due to systemic racism in the United States of America, as well as in Canada and other areas where Black Lives Matter is operating.
Does anyone else have a question for our three leaders?
Thank you, Leader AUTHCENT.
You are welcome, Citizen Seth.
So it's kind of tricky because, okay, so questions, not opinions. Okay, so it's not like a usual format. Throwing me off, I'm not gonna lie. So I guess it's a question, even if it's an opinion, right? So I guess my question is, what is the difference between authoritarianism and totalitarianism, I guess, on this point? Because I agree, if something has like survival importance to the state or to the people, then there's no aspect of citizen life that is off limits for state intervention, including, personal things, etc., but only when necessary. So where do you draw the line then between authoritarianism and totalitarianism? In other words, because you're not saying you're going to intervene where you don't need to. And that's basically what I say too. You only intervene when you need to. So is there an actual difference?
The difference between totalitarianism and authoritarianism is only in the areas permitted to control citizen shogun. Authoritarianism is a spectrum. Totalitarianism is the top of that spectrum. You were mentioning Ingsoc earlier from 1984. That would be totalitarian. However, Adolf Hitler's regime would also be totalitarian, as would Maoism be totalitarian, and even Stalinism would have elements of totalitarianism attached to it. Fascism by Benito Mussolini likewise would have totalitarian attributes.
I see. So do you feel there's some kind of like spiritual, I know you don't use the word spiritual, but like psychological or emotional benefit to people of being integrated or incorporated into like this vast like state? Like is it almost like people need to be like part of this big system? Is that the point?
Leader Jake, I call on you to answer this question, since our citizen Shogun is rather obsessed over spirituality and religion.
Leader Jake, are you able to answer our question?
Citizen Shogun, can you repeat the question?
I believe my question was, is the reason for totalitarianism partly that there's some kind of psychological or emotional, if not spiritual, benefit to integration in a state or a power? Like, because I get the part of it's like you can solve problems like COVID better. I agree with that. But is it also like people are more fulfilled if they're part of the state?
Citizen Shogun, discussion of religion and spirituality is absolutely forbidden, is a forbidden topic.
Have I committed a thought crime and a wrong think and a duck speak?
Yes, Citizen Shogun.
I apologize. I will study the rules of proper thought again before I ask another question. Give me a second.
Your
Citizen
apology has been
Shogun.
forgiven, Citizen Shogun.
Apologies.
All
Leader
right,
Jake.
I have a question.
Use the proper honorifics, Citizen Flo.
All right, leader, I got a question.
Citizen I got is not proper English.
I have.
Okay. And Citizen, what is your question?
All right, how were you all elected leaders?
We have no elections, Citizen.
So you claim to be something, but you were never given the right. Who gave you the right to be a leader?
We gave ourselves that right together, collectively, Citizen.
All right, then I give myself the right to be a leader as well.
Well, if I can just explain this a little bit, Citizen AUTHCENT, sorry, Leader AUTHCENT is correct because in the domain that she's referring to, she actually created her own server or community. So she literally gave herself that authority, and as I did as well, right, when I created a server. So that's coherent, and you can certainly call yourself a leader as well, but you're not a leader in this server or any other server I know of, so it has a different truth status, but that's not the point. I'm just pointing out that from a sociological point of view, power is as power does, so to speak. So you really can claim authority for yourself. And in fact, that's the only way authority was ever obtained.
Leader AUTHCENT, can I ask a question?
Citizen, is there a reason why you fail to follow the simple rules that have been laid out for you?
You talking to me or him?
No, I am not referring to you, Citizen Shogun.
Yeah, so please address Leader AUTHCENT as leader and request permission to ask a question about a particular subject before asking said question.
Leader AUTHCENT, can I ask you a question?
Citizen, and what is the nature of the question?
In regards to allowing magical practices under your regime?
Citizen End, was Leader Jake not clear as to the banned status of religion and spirituality, which would include all magical practices, superstitions?
Thank you for the
If you
clarity.
tried to like unironically ban religion, like a bunch of Christians would just kill you. So it's a stupid
Okay,
thing.
Ralph,
Not to
I'm
mention
going
the
to just
Muslims.
intervene right now and point out how important it is in this particular podcast to maintain an orderly decorum, a polite and impersonal manner of speaking, and strict adherence to all rules, so there can be no inflammatory rhetoric of any kind that would be normally associated with a person called you. Okay, so
Leader AUTHCENT, may I ask a question, please?
Citizen Sky, would you please detail the subject of the question, as I have continued to tell people tonight to do so, and no one seems to understand?
It is regarding certain activities allowed within the totalitarian society.
Yes, Citizen Sky, proceed.
What is your stance about sexual activities within the totalitarian society?
Citizen Sky, discussion of sex, adult, NSFW topics is absolutely forbidden.
Citizen Sky, I believe you were aware that discussion of sexuality was forbidden under the totalitarian regime. However, we shall carry on. So, does anyone else have a question? So, what would be the orienting moral principle of the totalitarian society? So, it's all well and good to say that the society.
Shogun, have you asked permission to ask a question?
Sorry?
Have you asked permission to ask a question?
I apologize. Leader AUTHCENT, may I ask a question about the primary teleological motive of the totalitarian state, meaning their primary impulse or motivation?
Yes, Citizen Shogun, you may.
Thank you, Leader AUTHCENT. What is the primary teleological impulse or motivation of the totalitarian state, meaning their purpose or moral directive?
This is a difficult question to answer, Citizen Shogun. However, I will give it my best attempt. To begin, the entirety of the state, the entirety of the whole, is centered around progress. Coming down from that, you have a variety of different elements. For example, the importance of contentment in the citizenry, the importance of community, meaning, having a sense of friendship with everyone, instead of not knowing your neighbors, instead of not knowing your coworkers. It is supposed to be a system which encourages social bonding on a mass level and a orthodoxy of sorts, or a common think. Common think is the idea that we all share certain common values, things that if you were to hold something which is forbidden, referred to as a vote, everyone, 98 to 100%, would agree to those values. However, what we would have would be opinion polling, which would allow us to gauge the status of the population. So common value or commonality, or common purpose is you would not wish to see children exploited to be forced to work in a coal mine, right? That would be terrible. We can all agree that would be terrible. We can all agree that would be exploitation.
That'd be sweet.
Could you please unperson Rawl?
I
Raw, Shonatary.
Yeah, you'll be muted for the rest of the night. We'll call that being unpersoned. So I just blew your brains out because you're a dog. I put you down like a dog. We'll carry on now.
That was inappropriate, Citizen Shogun,
Is that
Holy shit.
I apologize.
and that was inappropriate as well.
My apology was, or what Seth said.
What? I didn't say anything, dude.
Seth,
Leader AUTHCENT, I have a question concerning being unpersoned.
Suspended. You may not ask it.
Mr. Austin, may I ask you a question, please?
Citizen End, what is the question regarding?
In regards to bonding activities,
If it does not include anything not safe for work, then you may.
I was just wondering, Leader Austin, which bonding activities will be encouraged and which will be allowed in a general sense?
Bonding activities, citizen. Asking your fellow citizens how they are doing. Asking your fellow citizens if they are feeling in good spirits. Speaking to your fellow citizens when they are feeling upset. Helping them through troubles. Bonding in the sense of gathering with your fellow citizens, engaging in recreation with your fellow citizens. Those things are most excellent. Strong relationships between citizens, not specifically romantic relationships, but strong, friendly, as if we were all part of a family.
Can I interject?
No, you may not interject. That is not part of this. There is no interjecting.
Okay.
Leader Austin, may I ask you another question?
Once again, Citizen End, the answer is no until you learn the proper format of asking questions. So if you want to ask a question, you need to specify the nature of the question. Otherwise, I am from now on going to say no.
I want to reiterate that if you do not understand the correct protocols for asking questions, you may not ask questions. So please review the protocols. They're listed in the recorded event chat.
Leader Austin, may I ask you a question in regards to which recreational activities will be encouraged and allowed?
Yes, Citizen, you may.
Which recreational activities would be possibly banned and which would be encouraged and allowed?
You are going to have to be more specific, Citizen.
Leader Austin, are there any recreational activities currently in, say, a place like America that would not be allowed or be discouraged?
Recreational activities that damage the environment, recreational activities that damage a person or other person, recreational activities that are exploitive in nature. Skydiving would be an example of something that is damaging to the environment until such a technology has been developed as to make it environmentally sound. There would be certain sports that would be too damaging to a person to participate in, Citizen.
Thank you, Leader.
Oh, sorry. Leader AUTHCENT, may I ask a question regarding our population?
Yes, Citizen, you may.
How do we plan to grow the population in terms of children?
The most ideal form, citizen, is surrogacy and sperm donation. Until artificial wombs can become a reality, this is the most optimal for our population, ensuring diversity and genetic fitness. Also, this way, citizens will not have to be burdened by having and caring for offspring. They will be able to devote their entire existence to work, progress, and recreation, so they can actually be content and fully enjoy their existence under the state.
Leader AUTHCENT, may I ask a question concerning activities?
Citizens, you are to refer to each other as friend. You are not to refer to each other as citizens. Yes, citizen, you may.
Is, the recreational activity of dancing permitted?
Citizen, I do not understand why dancing would not be permitted.
I've got a
It
question.
is good for fitness. It is good for the mind. There is nothing terrible about dancing. Of course, music would not necessarily be what we have today, but it is most certain that you could dance to it, and therefore dancing is excellent.
I've got a question. What are the 5 things you would ban first and why?
You did not ask permission.
So, Mr. Engineer, my friend, in this particular podcast, we are adopting a special totalitarian rule structure, which requires you to first request permission to ask a question and also specify the particular subject of the question. For example, may I ask a question about walnuts, please? So, it may be somewhat difficult for someone of your political bent, but we ask you to entertain it for the duration of the podcast.
Of course.
It seems that Mad Mitch has asked a question in text, although has not asked permission. So, Mad Mitch, if you could follow protocol, I will answer your question.
I have another question, Leader AUTHCENT.
Yes, Citizen Set, would you please explain the nature of the question?
Do you love Kim Jong-un and Hitler?
No affected accents, please, Citizen Seth.
This is
Citizen
my
Seth, if you
totalitarianism accent.
Citizen Seth, if you do this again, you will be unpersoned.
Make
No,
me
please, dear AUTHCENT, please don't do this to me.
I just told you no accent. No, you've been unpersoned, man. Now you've been unpersoned. We told you no affected accents, and you persisted in disobedience. I mean, assumed disobedience.
Citizen Dontmer, yes, you may ask a question about entitlement.
I can't hear anybody.
The citizen is in text.
Would you like to read it, or would you like me to read it?
You may read it, Citizen Shogun.
All right. Thank you, Leader AUTHCENT. So the question is, Donmer, what entitles you to be called leader? Fair question. How would you answer it, friend?
Wrong.
Leader, apologies.
I accept your apology, Citizen Shogun. Citizen Dontmer, we refer to ourselves collectively as leader. There is no single leader in what we have built. The entire party and everyone associated with the party is referred to as leader. We are on equal ground. And as we are also workers, none of us own mansions. None of us have a luxurious living style. We are among the people. We just have a different position in society. we also have more rules than those whom are just referred to as citizens. The title leader displays to those that are citizens what our role is, and that is our role. We are to lead. We are to lead by example. Our behavior is to be better than what we expect. So we take ourselves and hold ourselves to the highest possible standard.
So maybe a fair question. Oh, I'm sorry. Leader AUTHCENT, may I ask a question about the problem of corruption in a totalitarian state, hypothetically speaking?
Yes, Citizen Shogun, you may.
Thank you, Leader AUTHCENT. So how would you prevent a powerful totalitarian state from becoming corrupt by, one or more people who are subverted through one or another means, such as bribery, nepotism, threats against their family, or seduction? How would this be prevented?
Leader Jake, this is for you to answer.
Citizen Shogun, what were you asking to be permitted?
My question was, because it's the same question I get when I talk about authoritarianism, is how would you prevent this powerful government that you propose from becoming corrupt and then becoming actually a problem rather than to the good of the people? So the question is, how would you prevent the corruption of a totalitarian state by an evil person or persons?
The party is always right, Citizen Shogun. No matter who runs it, they are following progress, the idea of progress. In whatever manner they are performing that, you can never be wrong. You can never be bad if you are the party.
Yeah. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength.
Citizen Shogun, would you please deal with one of your high-level mods and their statements in the recorded event text channel?
I shall. If you'd like to indicate, perhaps I'll see immediately when I look at it. Okay. I will correct Sure Trucker. Yeah, I apologize. Leader AUTHCENT, Trucker apparently occasionally has, moments of poor judgment.
So, to answer the question about corruption, it is well understood that, speaking as leadership, corruption is an ever-threatening issue for a state with absolute power. Complete global monitoring and lack of privacy, big tech solutions and algorithms, and oversight by those that are the overseers of all should do very well to prevent the type of corruption that would occur normally. There is no reason, when all are equal in leadership, to seek greater power in leadership. It does not exist. You do not have a infinitely better existence. You do not have a mansion. You do not have an infinitely greater amount of living provisions as a member of leadership. Therefore, why would anyone want to bribe their way into leadership purely because they would only be subjecting themselves to more rules than the citizenry has, higher standards, and no ability whatsoever to have leniency? They would be highly controlled and have very little right and very little privilege.
Okay, understood. I apologize. I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry. Yes. I apologize. I had to sneeze, Leader AUTHCENT. However, I wanted to ask if there is anything else that you would like to be sure that we cover, or that you wanted to discuss, a message perhaps in general terms. If you were to suppose that a few hundred people might hear the podcast, is there an overarching message you would like those people to receive?
Many question what I believe in, and many question the delivery of it. However, ultimately, the great goal, the reason for doing this all, is because when I look in my society, I see people fighting with each other for reasons they do not need to fight. If the burden of political thought was taken away from the people and given to the state, which is where it belongs, the citizen would no longer have to be concerned about dealing with that burden. The idea is to alleviate the citizen of these types of discomfort. I see that citizens are divided from one another on basis of religion. Religion causes wars, religion causes fights, religion causes disagreements. Religion gets people in situations where they lose friends that they've had for years, so does politics. So imagine those things not being a factor anymore. No more superstitions, no more conspiracy theories, no more accusing, no more media produced for purely ratings that pushes you to endure the worst of society. So you are literally trained to only think there's bad thing going on. There are bad thing going on. And that is a simplified, incorrect English way of saying, I am scared. I am trained to be scared. Actually, listen to the voice of Korea. They have music, they tell you what is happening. They have more music, they tell you other things that are occurring. It does not repeat ad nauseum, and all you hear
Well, thank you. And the other topics we've discussed. So I think this is a good time to wrap it up. Unless anybody has a really pressing final question or comment.
Leader AUTHCENT, I have a question about mental illness.
before you proceed to those in the recorded event channel. Refrain from posting images. It is against the rules. Also, yes, citizen, ask.
Do you have any history of mental illness in your family or yourself?
You are going to have to repeat the question, as it is difficult to understand you.
Do you have any history of mental illness in your family?
Are
we
you
can't really understand you, but you know what? I think that was actually a good point to end it on. And I think if you want to discuss more in the future, Leader AUTHCENT, we should do so. But I think this was a great introduction. So
citizen?
I was gonna kick him in the nuts when he turned around.
You
All
have been
right.
unpersoned.
I have been unpersoned. I have failed. Oh well.
Leader AUTHCENT, do you have any insight into this?
Yes, Leader Jake. He is non-viable.
Do you believe Room 101 would be able to fix his mind?
No.
He is currently at 0 rep.
Yes.
I agree that I'm non-viable, which is why I didn't get past the rule selection screen. But that was very beneficial. Thank you, Leader Rawl. Jake Rawl. That was very good.
That is how simulation is supposed to be run. You are supposed to be able to gauge a person's responses. In your case, the responses were gauged as to how violent of an individual you are. To gauge a person's what they would do within a totalitarian system, it would be a good set of different questions. You understand, Citizen Shogun? When I asked you to provide the simulation, I was very clear that it should detect if one is a hypocrite, if one would survive under such a system that they promote. You have a low intelligence, from what I understand.
Well, perhaps so. But, I mean, I have absolutely no problem with you having that opinion. But if it were true, it would imply that the entire structure of Canadian academic system was completely dysfunctional, which it may be. It may well be. But if it isn't, no.
I will not speak ill of the Canadian government.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've decided to say that I have low intelligence, which is fun. And I like that. And I don't care. So it's not a matter of me being like, oh my God, my feelings are hurt. But objectively speaking, I'm probably the smartest person I've ever met in most cases. And that's something that's been kind of acknowledged by everybody who's known me. So I may drink or whatever and be a little, loopy. But in terms of actual intelligence, yeah, not very many people can match me. And that's been basically acknowledged by what I've done, which is what you call meritocracy, right? So if you win a tournament, nobody can say you didn't win it. Nobody can say I didn't get all the scholarships I got. And those scholarships are based on essentially intelligence, because what you're talking about is your ability to write essays and research grants and proposals. And at the end of the day, those are intelligence-based accomplishments. So in effect, like I've said before, I've outperformed 99.9997% of people, and only 0.0003% of people have performed better than me. So I'm actually smarter than almost everybody, right? And what people don't like is that I'm willing to just say that and not give a fuck what anybody thinks.
And yet you swore, and yet you cannot keep the rules, and yet your simulation was trash, Citizen Shogun.
Well, I actually think mine were pretty good, right? Because I ran one that was like an adventure-based game, right? So in Dungeons and Dragons, you would be like...
You were not told to do that. It seems that following instructions is difficult for you, Citizen.
Well, perhaps, yeah. It might be. But the funny thing is I don't actually need to. And at the end of the day, power is as power does. So authoritarianism, totalitarianism, it's a game we play. But power is what you call realpolitik. And in realpolitik, I have the power. You're a guest on my show. So as entertaining as it is to pretend it's otherwise, which is what I entertain for this whole podcast. In fact, it's the other way around.
Citizen Shogun, you have now been impersoned.
I have been impersoned. Okay, I'm going to resign myself. I'll allow you to conclude this podcast. I apologize, Leader AUTHCENT and Leader Jake. I resign my life to the state. I love you guys. I hope you make progress. And I submit